Good day, viewers. Welcome to another mathematics presentation. So in this presentation, we are looking at lesson 2. And in this lesson 2, we are going to look at how we can multiply and divide complex numbers. So if you recall, in our first lesson, we looked at how we can add and subtract complex numbers. So before we continue to multiplication of complex numbers, it's very important that you have to recall what you learned in lesson 1. So we did mention that a complex number is a number that can be expressed in the form a plus bi. So this a, we said it represents the real part, and this b, we said it represents the imaginary part, and this I, we said it represents the unity, the imaginary unit, which can be defined as the square root of negative 1. Okay, so how can we now multiply two complex numbers? So if you want to multiply two complex numbers, you have to ensure that you can use what we call the distributive property or the FOIL method. So let's say you want to multiply a plus bi, then you also want to multiply c plus di. So remember, this a is the real part and this is the real part, then bi and di, or b and d, these are imaginary parts, then I and I, these are imaginary units. So the way you can multiply this, you just have to use the normal multiplication, where we say this a we will multiply with c plus di in brackets. Then here I used this a, so I've remained with plus bi. So here you write plus bi. I'm using this expansion method. Then you write c plus di. Okay, so once you do your arrangement, you can multiply this, where you say we are going to have a times c, we are going to have ac, plus a times di, we are going to have a di, plus bi times c, we are going to have bci, then plus bi times di, so b times d, we are going to have bd, then I times I, this will give us I squared. So this is what you are going to get. Now if you remember that we said I squared will give you a negative 1. So you have to take note of this. Wherever you have I squared, you have to know that you are going to have a negative 1. Okay, so we can simplify now this expression, okay, of which we can get this AC. Okay, AC, or we group the real parts together. So the real parts that we have, we will get AC. Okay, and then we are also going to consider BD. So you can see we have BD right here, because here I've said I squared, it's a negative 1. So this will change, because this I squared will be a negative 1. So positive times negative is negative BD. Then I'll write plus this ADI plus BCI, which is this one right here. So from here, we can just try to simplify this, and we are going to have something like this, where we say AC minus BD in brackets, then plus. Now for this one, the imaginary unit is similar, so you say AD minus BC, then the I outside. Okay, so this is how you can simplify it using the multiplication principle. So remember here, if you multiply two complex numbers, you are going to have another complex number. This is what you must know. Okay, very important. Now let's look here on this first page. I did mention that if you have something like this, okay, if you have something like this where they will give you a negative number. So I just want to explain something here before I proceed to the examples. So if you have here, if you have the square root of a negative 4, if you remember in the first lesson I did say that this will be, because there is no square root of a negative 4, but using complex numbers it will be there. So we are going to say this negative, say I, then we have the square root of a 4. So the square root of a 4, you know that it's a what? It's a 2. So this will be 2i, meaning that we have two possible values, which is giving us a negative value and a positive what? Value. Okay, so this is why they are even saying here, we define I squared is equal to negative 1. The number I is the square root of negative 1. Okay, so we write I is equal to square root of negative 1, which is I. Okay, so this is the principle. Again, if you have the square root of negative 17, okay, this will be written as I, so this will be written as I, then we find the square root of 17. So in this case 17 doesn't have a perfect square, so you just write I, then square root of what? 17 as your answer. Okay, because 17 doesn't have a perfect square. So we can now try to look at the examples. First example, we want to find the product of 2 plus 3i in brackets times 4 plus 5i. So the real parts we have a 2 here and a 4, and the imaginary part we have 3 and 5, and the imaginary units we have I and I. So what you do is you will get the first one because we want to expand using distributive method. So write the 2. Okay, I will get the 2 here, then I will multiply with this, which is a 4 plus 5i. Okay, then here I remained with a positive 3i, which I'll write here positive 3i. Then I'll multiply with this one, which is 4 plus 5i. Okay, then from there we just need to expand. So to expand the 2, multiply everything in brackets. 2 times 4, it's 8. 2 times 5, it's a 10. Then there is a I there, plus 3i times 4. So 3 times 4, it's a 12. Then 12i. Then positive times positive, it's a positive like this. 3 times 5, it's a what? It's a 15. Okay, then I times I. So in this case, you can treat I as a variable, as a letter. So I times I to be I squared. Okay, so if you remember, we have said that if you have I squared, okay, so I hope you remember, we have said that if you have I squared, this is equal to a negative 1. That's what you have said. So here where there is I squared is a negative 1. So you say 8 plus 10i plus 12i plus, so this one will be 15. Then this I squared is a negative 1. So that's what I'll substitute there. So we can do our simplification to simplify, where we will say we write this 8, then plus 10i plus 12i, meaning 10i plus 12i. This will give us a positive 22i, like this. Then here, this positive times the negative inside, it will be a negative 15 times 1, it's a 15. So from here we can correct this 8 and negative 15 are like terms, where we say 8 minus 15, then plus 22i. Okay, so from here we are going to say 8 minus 15 to give us a negative number because 8 is small. Okay, so 8 minus 15 to be a 7. So it's 8 minus 15 is negative 7, then plus 22i. So this is our answer. Remember what we said? If you multiply two complex numbers, they are going to give you another complex number. So this is the answer for our first example. Okay, so we can now look at our second example right here. So in our second example, we have 3 plus 2i in brackets, then 1 minus 4i. So we do the same, where we will say this real part 3, we will multiply 1 minus 4i in brackets, so it remained with plus 2i, so you say plus 2i, then you get the same 1 minus 4i. So from there we need to open the brackets by multiplying 3 times 1, it's a 3, minus 3 times 4, it's a 12i, then positive 2i times 1 to be positive 2i. Okay, and then positive times negative, it's a negative. 2 times 4, it's 8. I times I, it's I squared. So from there, remember we have said I squared is equal to negative 1. So here, where there is I squared, it will be a negative 1. So we are going to have 3 negative 12i plus 2i. So this will be negative 10i. Okay, like times I. So here minus, remember this I squared will be a negative 1. So this negative times this negative, it will be a positive. Then here we just remain with 8. So from there we say we correct the right terms, where we say 3 plus 8 minus 10i. Okay, so once we do that, what are we going to do? So we just need to evaluate 3 plus 8. What are we going to get? We'll get 11. So here we are going to have 11 minus 10i. Okay, so this is our answer. Okay, so if you have any question, you can ask. So remember what we have done here. Okay, we had 8i. So 8i squared, this i squared is a negative 1. So it will be replaced with a negative 1. Now remember outside 8 there was a negative. So negative times this negative, it's giving us a positive what? 8. This is the positive 8 that we wrote there. Then from here we corrected the right terms. 3 plus 8, this is what we wrote here, minus 10i. So this will give us 11 minus 10i. And this negative 10i, we got it from this part. Okay, from this part, because we have negative 2i plus 2, negative 12i plus 2i, which is a negative I. So we have looked at our lesson 2, which has to do with the multiplication of complex numbers. So if you have any question, you are free to ask.